The path to becoming powerful and unrecognizable in 2 weeks is not a path of shortcuts or empty promises. It is a journey that requires action, courage, and a willingness to embrace discomfort. It's about pushing yourself to show up every day, even when you don't feel like it, and believing that small, consistent steps can lead to monumental changes. It's about recognizing that identity is shaped by what you do, not just how you feel. And that true transformation happens when you start living in alignment with the person you aspire to be. The people you surround yourself with will either elevate you or hold you back. Your environment matters more than you might think. Choose wisely. Surround yourself with those who believe in your potential, who challenge you, and who encourage you to become the best version of yourself. Be intentional about the influences you let into your life, because they shape the way you think, act, and ultimately who you become. Don't wait for the right moment. Don't wait until you feel ready. Take action now, no matter how small, and allow momentum to carry you forward. The discomfort you feel along the way is not a sign that you're failing, it's the sign that you're growing. And growth, real growth, doesn't happen in the safety of the status quo. It happens when you push beyond your limits, when you choose discomfort over comfort, and when you refuse to stay the same. In 2 weeks, you can create a shift in how you approach your goals, how you see yourself, and how you interact with the world. It starts with small changes. It starts with the decision to act. And it starts with the belief that you are capable of more than you ever thought possible. Your transformation is within your control. Take the first step, and you'll see how far you can go. Power is clarity, not dominance. That's a concept many people misunderstand. When we think of powerful individuals, we often imagine loud voices commanding presence, or perhaps people who dominate conversations and demand attention. But real power doesn't come from raising your voice. It doesn't come from intimidation. Real power is quiet, it's anchored, it's calm in the chaos. It's the kind of presence that fills a room not with volume, but with certainty. Clarity is knowing exactly who you are and what you stand for. That's where true power begins. Because when you have clarity, you don't need validation, you don't need applause. You don't need to constantly defend your position or prove your worth. You've already done that work internally, and that inner work shows up externally. Think about the people you've met who radiate a quiet strength. They're the ones who don't say much, but when they do, everyone listens. Why? Because their words are deliberate. Because they aren't reacting, they're responding. Their clarity gives them presence. You can feel it in how they hold themselves, in how they listen, in how they pause before speaking. That's the energy of someone who knows who they are. That's clarity. Dominance, on the other hand, often stems from insecurity. It's the need to control, to force outcomes, to make sure others know you're in charge. It's fear disguised as leadership. And people can sense that. They may not always know what they're sensing, but something doesn't feel right. That kind of power is brittle. It needs constant maintenance. It relies on external acknowledgement to survive. But clarity is self-sustaining. It doesn't need a spotlight. In fact, it often works better without one. Clarity allows you to move with intention. It allows you to say no without guilt, to say yes without hesitation, to walk away from things that don't align with your values. It's a filter for your choices. And when your life is filtered through clarity, you stop chasing things that don't matter. You stop negotiating your worth. Imagine waking up and knowing what matters. Not guessing, not hoping, knowing. That level of certainty changes the way you operate. You stop rushing. You stop competing. You stop over-explaining. Because the power that comes from clarity eliminates the need for performance. You no longer need to be anything other than yourself, and that's exactly what draws people in. Clarity also creates boundaries, and boundaries are essential to protecting your power. Without clarity, we say yes too often. We commit to things out of guilt or obligation. We bend ourselves to fit situations that don't honor us. But with clarity, we draw lines not out of cruelty, but out of respect for ourselves and for others. Because when you are clear, you're not afraid to disappoint people who were never meant to guide your journey in the first place. People often ask how they can become more powerful, more influential. The truth is, it starts by getting clear on your values, clear on your purpose, clear on your voice. You can't influence anyone if you're constantly shifting who you are to fit in. Influence doesn't come from imitation. It comes from authenticity. And authenticity is impossible without clarity. When you're clear, you stop second-guessing. You trust your instincts. You trust your decisions. That doesn't mean you won't make mistakes. But even your mistakes become easier to own because you made them based on values, not fears. Clarity doesn't make you perfect. It makes you real. And real is rare. That's why it's powerful. There's also an emotional element to clarity. It gives you peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from having no problems, but the kind that stays even when everything around you is unstable. Clarity gives you an internal compass. So when the world pulls at you in different directions, when people project their doubts, when opportunities test your integrity, you stay anchored. You might bend, but you don't break, you don't get lost. That's what makes you formidable. Power that comes from clarity can't be stolen because it wasn't given to you by others. You built it yourself. You earned it in the quiet moments, when you asked yourself the hard questions, when you faced your fears, when you chose the harder path because it was the right one. That's the kind of power that endures. Unlearning is the first step to transformation. It's not always the exciting part. It's not the part people post about. But it's the truth. Because before you can become someone new, you have to let go of who you were taught to be. Not just on the surface, but deep in the core beliefs that have quietly shaped your decisions, your relationships, your confidence, and your identity. From childhood, we absorb stories. Stories about what's possible. Stories about what success looks like. Stories about who we should be, how we should behave, what's acceptable, and what's not. These stories don't always come from bad places. They might come from parents who were trying to protect us, teachers who wanted us to follow the rules, society trying to create order. But the effect is the same. We grow up layering ourselves with beliefs that don't belong to us. Unlearning begins when you realize that not everything you believe is true. That's a hard moment, because we like to think our beliefs are facts, that the way we see the world is the way it always is. But it's not. The way we see the world is simply a reflection of how we've been conditioned to see it. And conditioning is not truth. It's programming. If you've been told your whole life that you have to work yourself exhaustion to prove your worth, then rest will feel like laziness. Even when it's healthy. If you've been told you're not creative, you'll avoid every opportunity to express yourself. If you've been told that people like you don't succeed, you'll subconsciously sabotage every path that might lead to success. These aren't conscious decisions. These are learned responses. And what's been learned can be unlearned. That's where the real transformation begins. Not with learning new skills or reading more books, but with questioning the invisible scripts running your life. Who told you that you had to play small? Who convinced you that you weren't ready? Who made you feel like your voice didn't matter? And more importantly, why do you still believe them? Unlearning is difficult because it requires humility. It means admitting that we've been wrong, not just about the world, but about ourselves. It means revisiting moments from the past and seeing them with new eyes. It means grieving the version of you that followed the wrong path for too long. But it also means reclaiming power. Every belief you release creates space for something more true, more useful, more empowering. This is why transformation often feels messy. It's not just about adding better habits. It's about shedding false layers. And those layers can be deeply embedded. You might feel resistance. You might feel fear. That's okay. Those feelings don't mean you're failing. They mean you're evolving. The discomfort you feel during unlearning is your mind and body adapting to a new version of truth. Sometimes, unlearning means challenging your idea of success. Maybe success was defined for you as a certain title, income level, or lifestyle. But what if success is actually peace? What if it's alignment? What if it's doing work that lights you up rather than burns you out? You don't get to that kind of redefinition without unlearning the old metrics that never fit you to begin with. The same goes for identity. Most people live inside roles they didn't consciously choose: the achiever, the caretaker, the rebel, the quiet one, the dependable one. These roles are reinforced over time until we think they're who we are. But they're not. They're just patterns we fell into. And if you can fall into a pattern, you can step out of one too. Unlearning also requires stillness, not just to notice your thoughts, but to interrogate them. When you hear your inner critic speak, don't just accept it, ask who taught it to speak that way. When you feel afraid of trying something new, ask where that fear really comes from. Most of the time, it doesn't come from real danger. It comes from old conditioning trying to keep you safe through limitation. And the beautiful irony is that unlearning doesn't make you less of yourself. It makes you more. Because when you strip away everything that was placed on you by others, what's left is you. Raw, honest, capable, ready. You don't become powerful by stacking more on top of yourself. You become powerful by removing what never belonged in the first place. Transformation is not a matter of adding more layers. It's a process of excavation. The most authentic version of you isn't someone you have to create. It's someone you have to uncover. That uncovering begins the moment you're willing to question everything you thought you knew about who you are and what you're capable of. Identity follows action, not the other way around. That truth runs counter to what many of us are taught. We're often told that we must first believe in ourselves before we can take action, that confidence is a prerequisite to achievement. But in reality, the most powerful shifts in identity come after we act. After we do the thing we didn't think we could do. After we take the risk, step forward, and prove to ourselves that we are capable, even if we were uncertain at first. This is how transformation actually works. You act first, you build momentum. Then your mind catches up. Confidence doesn't magically appear before the leap. It builds as a result of taking it. Every time you push past resistance, your brain makes a noting, we survived that. And the next time it becomes easier, you're no longer someone who's never done it. You're someone who has. That's how identity shifts, not from thinking differently, but from doing differently. Most people wait. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel like the kind of person who wakes up early or speaks boldly or sets firm boundaries. But waiting reinforces the identity you're trying to escape. Because every day you wait, you reinforce the belief that you're not ready, not capable, not enough. Action breaks that cycle. Even imperfect action is more powerful than perfect intention. Think of someone who wants to become a writer. They might say, I'm not a writer yet. I don't have the credentials. I've never been published. So they wait. They research, plan, think, talk. But the only thing that actually makes you a writer is writing. The moment you sit down and start typing, you begin to shift. You're no longer someone who wants to write. You're someone who writes. That's how identity works. It doesn't require external permission. It requires internal decision. This idea is freeing because it means you don't have to change how you feel about yourself before you start. You can start scared, start unsure. Start tired. You can start while your inner critic is screaming. What matters is that you start. The more often you act in alignment with the identity you want to build, the faster that identity becomes real. And eventually, you don't have to fake it. You've built it. Your brain is always watching you. It records your choices and uses them to reinforce your self-image. So if you want to become disciplined, don't wait until you feel disciplined. Set your alarm and wake up on time. If you want to become a leader, don't wait until people follow you. Start leading, speak up, offer direction. If you want to be courageous, don't wait until the fear disappears. Step forward while it's still there. Action creates evidence. Evidence reshapes belief. The beauty of this is that it bypasses the need for motivation. Motivation is unreliable. Some days it shows up, some days it doesn't. But identity-driven behavior doesn't depend on motivation. It's rooted in who you're becoming. If you identify as someone who takes care of their health, going to the gym becomes part of the role. If you see yourself as someone who honors their word, following through becomes non-negotiable. The behavior becomes an extension of identity, not a negotiation with mood. This also changes how you approach failure. When identity is tied to action, failure is no longer a threat to who you are. It's just part of the process. You're still the kind of person who takes action, learns, and adjusts. That's a far more resilient foundation than trying to base your identity on flawless outcomes. It's not about doing everything right. It's about consistently showing up in a way that reflects who you want to be. One of the most common traps people fall into is thinking they need to have clarity before they move. But often, clarity comes from movement. When you act, you learn. When you experiment, you gain feedback. That feedback informs the next action. That cycle builds not only momentum, but also identity. You don't discover who you are by sitting still. You discover it by engaging with the world, by choosing, by doing. This process is uncomfortable. It requires effort. It requires you to live a little out of sync with your current self-perception. But that dissonance is where growth happens. You don't wait to become. You become through the doing. Your new identity isn't something you declare once. It's something you build brick by brick through repetition and alignment. Every choice you make is a vote for the kind of person you want to be. Every repeated action solidifies that vote. Over time, those votes add up. And one day you wake up and realizing you're no longer pretending. You are small, consistent changes create lasting shifts. It's easy to overlook the power of small actions, especially in a world that glorifies dramatic transformations and overnight success. We're conditioned to believe that if the change isn't big, it doesn't count. That unless we completely overhaul our lives, we're not doing enough. But lasting change rarely comes from grand gestures. It comes from quiet, repeated decisions that compound over time. It's the small things done consistently that reshape identity, behavior, and ultimately results. Real transformation begins in the mundane. Waking up 10 minutes earlier, drinking water before coffee, choosing to respond instead of react, journaling 1 page a day. These aren't headline-worthy moves. No one applauds you for making your bed or going on a 10-minute walk. But those small actions carry weight, not because they're impressive on their own, but because they create momentum. And momentum is what breaks inertia. Consistency creates familiarity. The first time you make a new choice, it feels foreign, awkward, even uncomfortable. But the 5th time, the 10th, it starts to feel normal. It starts to feel like you. That's how habits form. And more importantly, that's how identity forms. Every time you show up, even in a small way, you reinforce the belief that you're the kind of person who does. That reinforcement builds self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence. Most people underestimate how powerful they are simply because they overestimate how much they have to do to make a difference. They think they need a dramatic breakthrough, but breakthroughs often come after dozens of quiet steps that no one saw. They come after days, weeks, or even months of small shifts that looked insignificant at the time. The problem is, those small shifts are easy to skip, and when skipped, the belief that nothing's changing begins to take root. But change is always happening, even when it's not visible yet. It just takes time to show. Consistency also protects you from burnout. When you make small adjustments rather than trying to change everything at once, you're more likely to stay with the process. You're not overwhelmed. You're not running on adrenaline. You're building a rhythm. And rhythms are sustainable. Anyone can be disciplined for a day. True transformation comes from discipline over time, from habits that support you rather than exhaust you. Small changes are also easier to control. You don't have to rely on motivation, which fluctuates. You rely on structure, on a system that works regardless of how you feel. One new thought each morning. One intentional pause before speaking. One aligned choice per day. These micro decisions build resilience. They remind you that you're not powerless, even on hard days. Especially on hard days. There's also a psychological shift that happens when you start small. You remove resistance. You make success feel accessible. And once you feel capable of one small win, you're more likely to pursue another. It's a positive feedback loop. The smallest shift in behavior can lead to a shift in mindset, which then leads to another shift in behavior. That compounding effect is where real growth happens. Most people quit not because they're incapable, but because they're impatient. They expect massive results from minimal effort. And when they don't see it, they stop. But the people who change the game, they show up for the reps. They respect the process. They fall in love with progress over perfection. They know that change doesn't happen in one big move. It happens in the thousands of small decisions made when no one is watching. Small changes also create adaptability. When you're not locked into an all or nothing mindset, you're free to adjust without judgment. Miss a day. You're not off track, you're meant to start again the next day. That kind of grace is powerful. It allows consistency to be a journey rather than a prison. It builds resilience, not rigidity. Lasting shifts are built through behaviors that can withstand the ups and downs of life. Big goals are great for vision, but it's the small habits that bring them to life. And because they're small, they're repeatable. Repeatability is what turns effort into excellence. You can't master anything you only do occasionally. You master what you do consistently. That's where the shift happens, from effort to instinct, from intention to identity. Transformation is not about intensity. It's about intention multiplied over time. The question isn't, what can I do once to change everything? The real question is, what can I do every day to change something? Because the person who changes one thing every day will eventually change everything. Discomfort is the cost of becoming unrecognizable. This is the part of transformation most people shy away from, the part that feels too hard, too overwhelming, and too risky. We all want to grow. We all want to become better versions of ourselves. But what we often forget is that growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. It happens when we step outside of what's familiar, when we challenge ourselves, and when we choose to be uncomfortable with the process of change. The discomfort of growth is both physical and emotional. On the physical level, it could manifest as the soreness after a workout, the tiredness from working late into the night to pursue a dream, or the stress that comes with putting yourself out there in front of people. But this is the easy discomfort. The real challenge lies in the emotional discomfort. It's the vulnerability of taking risks, the anxiety of facing rejection, and the fear of failure. It's the doubt that creeps in when you feel like you're not yet where you want to be. People often associate discomfort with failure. The moment we start to feel uncomfortable, we think something's going wrong. We assume that discomfort is a sign that we should retreat, that we should go back to what we know because it feels safe. But discomfort is the signal that you're on the right track. It's the sign that you're pushing yourself beyond the limits of your current self. If you're not uncomfortable, then you're not changing. If you're not experiencing resistance, you're not evolving. Growth happens at the edge of what you already know. And that edge is always uncomfortable. One of the reasons people avoid discomfort is it doesn't always feel productive. We live in a world where results are measured by visible achievements. If you're not seeing immediate changes, you might begin to think that you're wasting time. But real transformation isn't always visible in the moment. It's not always measurable. You're building something inside yourself that others can't see yet. The emotional stamina, the strength to keep going despite the doubts, the resilience to keep taking action when you don't feel like it. Those are the things that make you unrecognizable. Those are the things that create the kind of transformation that can't be erased. The discomfort of growth is also tied to the fear of judgment. People are afraid to stand out because standing out makes them visible. And being visible means being seen, being scrutinized, being judged. When you start showing up as a new version of yourself, there's always the risk that others will not understand or approve. They may question your choices. They may challenge your actions. They may criticize your decisions. This is a normal part of the process. People are often uncomfortable with change, especially when it disrupts their expectations of who you are. But it's not your job to stay in the box they've created for you. You don't need their approval to grow. The more you step outside of your old patterns, the more unrecognizable you become. And that's the goal. This is where the emotional discomfort becomes the most intense. The fear of judgment often comes with a deep sense of vulnerability. It's terrifying to reveal the parts of yourself you've kept hidden or to take the risk of putting your authentic self into the world. But this is the cost of transformation. To become someone you've never been before, you have to do things you've never done before. You have to take risks, to fail, to succeed, and to constantly put yourself in situations that challenge the way you think and behave. The discomfort of growth also comes with the challenge of letting go of who you used to be. We hold onto old identities because they feel familiar. We hold onto old habits because they've served us in some way, even if they no longer support the person we want to become. Letting go of those old parts of yourself can be one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But when you choose growth, you choose to leave behind what no longer serves you. You choose to shed old skin, even when it's painful, even when it feels like you're losing parts of yourself. But in reality, you're not losing anything. You're shedding what's no longer needed in order to make room for something greater. The discomfort of becoming unrecognizable is a necessary part of your evolution. It is the space where you break free from your past self and step into the new version of you that is waiting. And while the process can be painful, it's also one of the most empowering things you will ever do. When you emerge from the discomfort, you are no longer the same person. You are stronger. You are more resilient. You are more aligned with the person you were always meant to be. What you need to understand is that discomfort isn't something to avoid. It's something to embrace. Every time you feel uncomfortable, it's a sign that you're growing. Every time you experience resistance, it's a sign that you're getting closer to the next version of yourself. When you learn to step into discomfort rather than run from it, you unlock your true potential. This is the cost of becoming unrecognizable, the willingness to endure the discomfort that comes with growth, knowing that on the other side is a version of yourself that is stronger, more confident, and more capable than you ever imagined. The people you surround yourself with are the single most powerful factor in your transformation. This may seem simple, but it's one of the most profound truths you'll ever encounter. Humans are social creatures, and whether we like it or not, the energy and mindset of the people around us shape our own. This is why it's critical to be intentional about who you allow into your life, because the right relationships will elevate you, and the wrong ones will pull you down. To become unrecognizable, you must consciously choose the company you keep. It's easy to underestimate the influence others have on us. We like to think that we are independent in our thinking, that we can choose our actions and beliefs without any outside influence. But the reality is we are constantly influenced by the people we spend time with, even if we're not consciously aware of it. The conversations we engage in, the energy we absorb, the expectations others place on us. All of these factors slowly, subtly shape who we are. The more time we spend with people who are stagnant, negative, or uninspired, the more likely we are to adopt similar beliefs and behaviors. And conversely, the more time we spend with people who are driven, passionate, and growth-oriented, the more we begin to reflect those qualities. The people you surround yourself with don't just impact your immediate mindset, they influence the trajectory of your life. When you are constantly around individuals who settle for mediocrity, it becomes easier for you to do the same. But when you surround yourself with those who are ambitious, who push boundaries, and who refuse to accept anything less than their best, you can't help but start doing the same. It's not about comparison or competition, it's about osmosis. You start to absorb their energy, their attitude, their focus. It starts to feel normal to want more, to aim higher, to be better. This is the power of a growth-oriented community. But it's not just about ambition, it's also about values. The people you associate with will influence the principles that guide your life. If you're surrounded by individuals who value honesty, integrity, and authenticity, it will become easier for you to stay aligned with those same values. On the other hand, If you're surrounded by individuals who are willing to compromise their values for success or approval, you may find yourself doing the same. Your values, your integrity, your sense of purpose, these are all shaped by the people you let into your inner circle. Sometimes we feel obligated to keep relationships simply because they've been a part of our lives for a long time. But this can be one of the most limiting things we can do. Just because someone has been in your life for years doesn't mean they are helping you grow. In fact, sometimes the longest friendships or family ties can keep us stuck in old patterns, preventing us from stepping into the next phase of our growth. You may find that the people who have been in your life for a long time are the very ones who hold you back from becoming who you're meant to be. This doesn't mean you have to cut ties with them entirely, but it does mean you have to reevaluate how much influence they have over your life. Are they encouraging your growth? Or are they reinforcing your fears and limitations? On the other hand, the right people, those who are supportive, who challenge you to be better, who believe in your potential even when you don't see it yourself, are invaluable. They create an environment where you can flourish. They celebrate your wins, but they also challenge you to do more, to reach higher. They are the ones who don't let you settle. They're not afraid to call you out when you're not living up to your potential, but they do it in a way that lifts you up, not brings you down. They show you what's possible, not just for them, but for you as well. This dynamic doesn't just apply to friends. It extends to colleagues, mentors, and even family members. If you are working with people who don't share your values or who dismiss your ambitions, it will be difficult to thrive. Similarly, a mentor who encourages you to keep pushing forward, who sees your potential before you do, can be one of the most transformative influences in your life. It's easy to underestimate the impact that a single individual can have on your life. A few words of encouragement, a bit of advice, or a new perspective can be the spark that propels you to the next level. Being in the right environment is key. When you are constantly surrounded by people who encourage you, who inspire you, who challenge you to step up, you begin to believe in yourself in ways you never thought possible. These relationships create the fertile soil from which your transformation can grow. But if you're surrounded by negativity, apathy, or complacency, it's much harder to evolve. That's why it's essential to curate your circle intentionally. Seek out relationships that inspire you. Let go of connections that drain your energy or hinder your growth. This doesn't mean that everyone in your life needs to be a high achiever or a personal development guru. But it does mean that you need to seek out people who align with the vision of the person you want to become. If your circle is filled with people who encourage you to dream big, who are willing to take risks, who push you to challenge the status quo, then you will become the person who embodies those qualities. Your environment will support your growth in ways you can't predict, simply because you are surrounding yourself with individuals who reflect the kind of life you want to create.